Okay, well, we've been recording for I don't know how long now. We haven't even
2
done
minutes.
the intro.
2 minutes. We need an intro.
Do you want to do the honours?
No, I'm bad with intros. Fuck, we useless, aren't we? Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Two Peas in the Podcast. I am your humble host, Shay, and I'm joined by fellow reactor, rockstar, and Mr. Nice Guy, Dan.
Hello, Shay. You dingo dangbat.
It feels good to be back.
It does. It's been a number of weeks now since we've started releasing all the podcasts and stuff, episodes and the parts and that, and it kind of feels like no time at all at the same time.
Apologies for missing out on, well, it's not the last episode, but episode 2, time conflict.
Schedules. Yeah, just one of those things, isn't it? I mean, we're dealing with people who are on different time zones, on different continents. It's bound to happen sooner or later.
It's going to happen again for sure.
There'll be a time I'm sure where I won't be able to make the call. So,
oh, you reckon?
It's one of those things.
But you're Mr. Nice Guy, Dan. You'll always find the time to do it.
I'll be on my phone in that case. I know people who might be listening to this podcast rather than watching it won't really get this next little bit, but just want to say for those who are watching this, I am going to sort out this camera angle at some point. It's making me look terrible.
It's not that bad.
So I need to. I did attempt to, this is probably where you're going to start this picture, isn't it? I did attempt to use my other screen. I have a second screen with a webcam in it. But that was even less flattering than I could ever imagine. So apologies for that. I will be sorting my life out sooner or later.
This is a good laugh, though.
It was a good laugh.
Bit of a giggle.
I couldn't believe it. I was washed out. I was chubby. Which threw me. Fuck knows why. I mean, I know I've been enjoying my cooked breakfast lately, but Jesus, that's like my weekend treat, you know? I don't think I was putting on the pounds in the week. Although we have just gone through Easter, so I've been munching on some eggs.
But keep in mind, snake diet is always the last resort.
I told my wife about that. She looked into it, and in like the first few minutes of searching, looking into like the subject of it, it was just full of like people, like doctors and dietitians saying that you really shouldn't be doing it because effectively it's working your organs, things can shut down, and I'm like, fuck, I don't want my organs to collapse.
Not if you've got the fat to lose. Once you run out of fat, then yeah, you won't want to lay off the fasting. But as long as you got fat, stop fucking eating. Fat fucking pig.
Yeah, I know. Well, like I say, she did the research. She looked on Google for like 2 minutes and found that. So I haven't looked at it either way.
Yeah, but there's a reason for that. They have their own agendas. They have their own products they want to sell.
Yeah.
He's not selling anything but motivation. Even that's free. Like, results don't lie. And when I was fasting, like that was the best I ever felt. So
let's just say we're not medical professionals. We're not professional dietitians. We're not experts by any stretch. So do your own research.
Yeah.
And if you want to take on the snake diet, by all means, the information is free. It's all out there. At the end of the day, it's just basic maths. If you're burning more calories than or even just by not any, if you don't do any exercise, if you're just there doing your day-to-day stuff and you're consuming fewer calories than you need, you're going to lose weight.
There's also a snake diet Facebook group that Cole runs. Like, there's thousands of members on there, and there's a bunch of people just results after results after results. It's all there.
Okay.
So look that up too, if you're thinking about doing it. But as for our first topic of the day, Dan?
Yes. So this, it kind of sprung on me recently that my mother-in-law is in fact, well, this is where the debate really started. She was born in Germany. Her dad was stationed out there for the war. Her mum obviously went out there to be with him and stuff. And I think they must have been there a couple of years because I'm sure her brother was also born in Germany. So there's at least a couple of years that they were in Germany. But she's lived here back in the UK like all of her life. She speaks English. She's, other than her birth certificate saying that she was born in Germany, you would never know she's anything other than that she is, So I said to my wife, so basically, she's German. And she was like, no, she's not German. She's British. I was like, well, she's born in Germany, so she's German. Even though she's raised here, she can't speak German. She's literally like so pro-British. She's just a standard British citizen. And I was like, yeah, but she was born in Germany, so she is German, surely. And it started bringing up this whole nationality thing. And I was thinking, that kind of makes sense because you get people with dual citizenship. So I thought of you, Shay, because you were born in New Zealand and you lived there for how many years?
23.
23 years. And now you live in Australia. You're an Australian citizen, right?
Yes.
You sound like unsure there. Like, am I? Did I move here illegally?
No, you're confused. Because I went over this recently. No, I'm not an Australian citizen. What am I did look into this the other day to see how many years I had to be here to be able to apply.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I'm actually not. And
you had to have opened a can of worms.
Yeah, you had to have moved here before a certain year. I can't remember if it was like 2000 or something. 2003, 4. I can't remember. But no, yeah, I'm just a resident.
Okay, interesting.
But as for your grandmother?
Mother-in-law.
Mother-in-law. German.
Yeah.
It's in your blood. There's no argument.
But this is, okay, so her parents are both English. So she's, in terms of her ancestry, she's English, but she was just born in Germany. So is she English?
Oh. She's born in Germany, but it's not in her blood.
No.
And
so
her parents are both British. Is that what you just said? Did you just say both your parents are British?
Yes.
Okay, then by that argument, I would say she's British.
So...
I must have misheard you. I thought she was born there and she was German.
No,
but
she
then
was
moved
just
over
born in Germany, and because of the war, so they were stationed. Her dad was stationed out there. But I was thinking, like, okay, so if I move to the Philippines, and with my wife, and we have a kid, and they grew up in a Filipino school neighborhood, they speak Tagalog, met somebody else, are they still English? Or
yes,
are they now Filipino?
They are English, but also Filipino by heart.
So you could say that. I don't know. I sort of disagree with that.
If one of the parents were part Filipino, even in the slightest way, then they would be Filipino. Part Filipino.
Yeah, so by blood, the kid would still be English.
Yes.
But in every other aspect, they'd be Filipino.
By heart.
It's just really confusing though, isn't it? Because then you start wondering, like...
Did you think I was going to say the opposite?
I don't know. That's why I was kind of picking your brains about it, because I thought if you'd moved to Australia, you'd have a dual citizenship. Maybe you'd be able to kind of...
Even if I did, I would still consider myself a New Zealander. I love Australia. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I'll never be Australian.
Yeah, so you're a New Zealander.
Yeah.
Because you were born and raised in New Zealand.
Yeah.
By New Zealand
parents. New Zealand blood. Māori blood.
Yeah. I had a good argument, but
This actually wasn't what I thought you were going to say. Like, I didn't realize this is the story.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate. Like another example, I was watching a TV show called Long Way Up, and it's basically Charlie Boorman and Ewan McGregor on a motorcycle trip from South America to California. And one of the countries they were passing through, Obviously, they have to get their passport stamped at the different gates and stuff. And he had 2 passports. Ewan McGregor had a British passport, and he also had an American passport because he has got American citizenship. And I was thinking, but you're Scottish. You may have applied to be a citizen of the United States and had that, granted to you. So you are effectively an American citizen, but that doesn't make you American, does it? You're still Scottish. You're still from Scotland. You're British. You don't just change nationality.
Yeah. No,
Is that different?
That's...
Do you see what I mean, though? Like,
I do. Yeah, you can't just change. You don't just change.
So that's...
I understand where you're going with the whole, like, being born somewhere. Like, it's different, but it's still the same result.
As in, it's different scenario, but
It's a different scenario, but same result. Your nationality comes back to who your parents are and what they are.
Yeah, so in Ewan's case, he's British.
Yes.
So now if he has a kid with an American citizen...
That kid is British and American.
Yeah.
If the partner is American.
Yes, there'd be half British, half American.
Yeah.
And their, birth certificate and nationality, etc., would be American because that's where they were born.
Yes. But he is not American.
No.
Even if he has documentation. You're British.
This is why I think it's a bit strange. Like, so what? It's like a nature-nurture thing, isn't it? It's like, are you defined by where you live or defined by who your parents are?
It's kind of a different topic altogether. It's not just ethnicity. It's like who you are to the core.
So I'm putting it out there to everyone else who's watching this episode or this part of the episode. And if you have, especially because Filipinos move all across the world, aren't they? Overseas Filipino workers. And I know a lot of people are around the world on work visas, or perhaps they are legitimately moved to another country and met somebody else and live another life. So I'd be interested to find out their thoughts on nationality. Do they consider them? Oh, they would obviously at that point still consider themselves Filipino, but if they've got dual nationality, are they sort of the country they're in? Is it Norwegian or US or whatever? Just how do they define themselves?
I'd say they'll still define themselves as Filipino. The whole passport thing is just makes life easier for them. It's not really. Yeah. It doesn't really come back to who they are, by terms of ethnicity. But
whether you're a baby of 1 or 2 and you move back to, like in my mother-in-law's case, she was born in Germany, although to British parents, they came back to England. So whether you're like 1 or 2 years old or 40 years old, if your parents are still of a certain heritage, then that's who you are, isn't it?
That's correct. That's the easiest way to understand it as well.
Yeah, it's a bloody minefield, isn't it?
It's weird because in New Zealand, there's so many different cultures there. A lot of people that live there consider themselves a New Zealander. But everyone who lives in New Zealand will live there for a certain amount of period or majority of their life would be considered a New Zealander, a Kiwi. I feel like that's different to being British or Filipino or Indian. I don't know, because I don't just consider myself a Kiwi. I consider myself Māori, so Māori blood, which I'm native to New Zealand. I put as the equivalent of being Filipino or British. It's its own ethnicity, but in New Zealander, that's not an ethnicity. Although then I'm asking myself, what would the Pākehā, which is white Kiwis, Pākehā, that's the Māori term for being white in New Zealand, they would fall under being a New Zealander. But I've never really seen like that as an ethnicity. It's a weird... you've confused the fucking topic, Dan, by asking me this question now. Because it kind of contradicts what I've just said.
Even time can affect it. So, for example, I was watching a TV show recently called The Luminaries, which is basically a show set in New Zealand. It's the gold rush. So if you consider people coming over to New Zealand who were there for work, who then decided to reside there. So let's say British people, for example, you get British people now residing in New Zealand. There could be two Brits that get together, pop out a sprog on New Zealand turf. They grow up, meet someone else who could also be from another British couple on New Zealand turf. So at what point do they then become New Zealanders? Because then eventually they will be what would effectively not so much native New Zealanders, but there will be in the same way like Americans. Because you mentioned Maori compared to New Zealanders, like the rest of
yeah.
the descendants. But like if you think of like Native Americans compared to what we now class as like the rest of Americans, which is mostly down to invasions and people going over from Europe and stuff. So their descendants really are from Europeans. But that's getting into a whole nother level, I think.
This is the difference, though. In America, there's obviously different cultures, but American, is that an ethnicity? I feel like it's like in New Zealand. It's nationality. Sorry, yeah, nationality. So let me revert back to the question again.
What qualifies as a nationality?
Oh, okay. I think it depends. It depends on what it is. Because that's the only thing that's going to match what I've said.
Well, we have a huge grey area here. It makes you think maybe we're thinking too hard about it. Maybe because, you could go back generations and generations and it'd be a lot simplified. But there's so much cross-contamination now with different nationalities getting together, emigrating. There's no true blood anymore, is there? So do you define your nationality based on just your parents or your grandparents or your ancestors beyond that? Or do you define it by geographical location? Because that would be sometimes that could be a simpler way of doing it.
It's a tricky question.
Documentation.
I'm just Googling something real quick.
This would be like a thought-provoking episode for those watching.
I've just looked up nationality versus ethnicity because this is starting to confuse the shit out of me now. Technically, they are obviously different things. Mm-hmm. It says people can share the same nationality but be of different ethnic groups. And people who share an ethnic identity can be of different nationalities.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Is there another term? Is there another term for being from the UK?
Being from the UK?
Yes.
What is it, like British, English, Scottish, Irish, Welsh, Northern Irish? Irish? What do you mean? Is that
defining a group of like everyone who lives in the UK and has been there for a certain amount of time who consider themselves
British?
Because
we've got a lot of people who have come over here. Quite prominently, we've got a lot of Indian residents. And it could be not even that far back. It could be like grandparents sort of generation who moved from India or Pakistan or something. They've come over here. Other Asian countries are on offer, by the way, who've come to the UK for a better living. And so, of course, their children and grandchildren, which are now kind of like our age, who are born over here. So they are British by definition, but they are, like you say, different ethnicity. So, same nationality, different ethnicity. And, you could have the same people who are still living in India, who are the same ethnicity, but different nationality. So,
I think this is where it starts getting confusing, where the nationality is the same as the ethnicity. When it falls under the one name, it's when it gets confusing.
That would be like a pure-blooded resident, though, wouldn't it? Like you're fully one thing. Is that not easier? Because it's like dogs. It's like you got your full breed dogs, then you got your Mongols. So surely having your full bred, this is who you are, right the way back to your ancestry line. That's kind of your full blooded.
But
national.
this is how I look at it. If I move to India, let's say I'm 80 years old and I moved to India when I was like 5 and I lived there for my entire life. Does that and I happen to be of a white complexion, would that make me Indian?
This is my question.
No, I'm asking you a different way just to hear your answer to that. Because it all depends.
Assuming you speak Indian and everything else is Indian life, are you saying that's how you've lived your life? If you were,
Yes.
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it?
It's confusing. Because you look at him, he looks like you. He looks like you plus another 50 years.
That's kind of you. But yeah,
would you look in the mirror and say, I'm Indian?
I don't think I would,
Yeah. Maybe.
Which comes back to my point. If just because you're born in a country and live in another one, does that make you, in your scenario, does that make you Indian or from New Zealand? Because if it's my mother-in-law, in that same scenario, she'd still be German, right?
Let's change it. We'll change the country. Same person, same white complexion. Change the country to New Zealand. The person would be considered a New Zealander because in New Zealand, being a New Zealander, being a Kiwi, covers pretty much every nationality. We all fall under one, under the term New Zealander, Kiwi. If you've been there a certain amount of time or lived there most of your life. But it's different when you change the countries, especially when it's to a country where you don't look like anyone in that country.
I understand what you're saying, but it shouldn't matter, really, should it? You change the country and suddenly your perception changes, but why should it? But I understand what you're saying, and you're completely right. But it's just, it's your mindset, isn't it? So then you start, it becomes not so much a question of nationality, but then ethnicity, doesn't it? Because that's what changes.
Yeah.
If you change how you look, suddenly your idea of where you're from therefore changes.
Okay, I've got another scenario. Let's say let's say 5-year-old me moved over with my parents to the Philippines, and I spent the same amount of time there. I can speak Tagalog. I'm able to blend in the crowds. Would I be considered Filipino? It's a little different because now I can blend in.
That's true.
I'm looking like Filipino.
Arguably, I'd say yes, but then it sort of contradicts what we just said about India, doesn't it?
And we already know I get approached by Filipinos all the time. They all think I'm Filipino.
That's so true. I don't know if there's even an answer for this, really. We're digging and digging, but we keep coming up with different scenarios and different answers.
Different scenarios.
Interesting.
Maybe all depends.
Irrespective of what official documentation say where you're from or who your parents are. Because let's flip it another way, just to throw another one out there. Let's say you're adopted and you go into, or me, because I'm probably fairer skinned than you are, I get adopted by a black family, for example.
Yeah.
In another country. Now, how does that change things? Because I don't suddenly become, let's say, Nigeria, for example. I don't become a Nigerian, certainly not the way I look. But I'm adopted under a legal, I take on their legal name. I live in Nigeria. I don't speak Nigerian. But then I'm still going to be British, right?
Because it's the same as the Indian being in India.
Exactly. It's a strange one. Yeah, so what I was saying was, it doesn't matter where you're from, what you look like, you choose who you want to be. I think that's the only thing that they all have in common. You define where you are and who you are.
Only thing is, don't expect everyone to accept that. That's the only thing as well.
Yeah, that's very true.
People are going to have their own thoughts on it. Can be judged on the spot.
And that's when you get the whole racism thing as well. I think people can... There's a story I read the other day, actually. There's a kid in school who was bullied for being different, skin tone, different skin color, and that. Even though he was fully British, born over here, raised here, his whole life has been here. Just because he looks different, he was told to go back to his own country. It's shit. It really is shit. But it happens, and that's just like you say. You can be who you want to be and define where you are and what you are. But you then have to deal with people who may disagree with you.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be the case, but it does happen.
I'd say whatever you feel in here is what you are. Fuck what anyone else says.